So today, we are decidedly and purposely waiting and seeing what God has for us. I think like we've seen already, God knows what His people need. And God knows what should be said and not said and shared and not shared. In fact, if you look at the New Testament, that's a lot of how they had church. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians that when they gathered, everyone brought a song or a teaching or a prayer or a prophecy or a praise. And that's how they shared when they gathered together. So today, we're going to be spending a chunk of our time sharing with each other. So I want you right now to be thinking in your mind, reflecting on this year, reflecting on what God has been doing in your heart, in your family, in your community, and see if there's anything that He has for you to share with your people. It could be a prayer. It could be a Bible verse. It could be a song. Just sing it. I'll come up and play it. We're going to let the Spirit decide what the rest of the service is going to look like. I'm just going to share for a minute, though, something that's been on my mind and my heart, and to give you guys time to think. Okay? C.S. Lewis, when he converted to Christianity, had a dizzying way of thinking about it, but something that he and his friends talked about was myths. C.S. Lewis was a great friend with J.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis wrote The Chronicles of Narnia, and they both wrote many other things. They both had this mind for allegory and symbolism and fantasy and myths. And he talked about, right shortly after his conversion, the myth of Christianity and how it had come alive to him. You see, a myth in C.S. Lewis's mind was a story that was told. A story that was told to represent something bigger, something greater, something beyond explanation. That's what a myth was. The thing is, myths are false. Fables, fairy tales, stories. Well, he wrote to a friend like 2 months after he received Jesus as his Savior, after he converted to Christianity. He says, I don't know how it happened. He says, I was on a carriage ride, I was going someplace, and I got into the carriage that day. It was in September 1931, right? He said, I got to that carriage not believing that Jesus was the Son of God. And I got off that carriage believing that He was the Son of God. And he says, and I hadn't even spent the journey in thought. He doesn't know how it happened. It just happened. God grabbed hold of his heart. So shortly thereafter, he wrote this letter to a friend, talking about the myth of Christianity. And I kind of wanted to reflect on it a little. He says, the myth of Christianity is God expressing Himself through what we call real things. Therefore, it is true. It's a real thing, okay? Not in the sense of being a description of God that no finite mind could take in, but in the sense of being the way in which God chooses to appear to our faculties. He made this distinction. Jesus coming to earth. God Himself coming to earth was a myth, a true myth. Something that was beyond comprehension. Something that our finite minds cannot really take in. All right? But it is what God did. Go ahead and flip over. He says, therefore now the doctrines that we get out of this true myth are, of course, less true. They are translations into our concepts and ideas of that which God has already expressed in a language more adequate. Namely, the actual incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection. So let me boil this down to the way I understand it. Our world was broken. Mankind was broken. Our hearts were prone to wander from God, and we could not see Him because all we saw was ourselves and our own desires and wants and lusts. That was the state of the world. And throughout the history of the Bible, God kept reaching out and giving new promises and giving covenants to man and meeting with different people and nations and families. But every time, every step along the way, mankind failed. So God said, I'm going to fix this. And He didn't send the Bible. He didn't send doctrine or teaching or truth. He didn't send any of that. He sent a person. God, with his divine hand, impacted reality as we know it and changed it. And that dizzying, incredible thing was beyond our ability to understand. And we are right now reeling from all of that, from the impact that Jesus Christ had on this world, trying to figure it out, trying to understand it. And that's what our doctrine and our teaching and our theology and when we turn to Scripture and we read about it, trying to figure out what God actually did, the thing that God has already expressed in a language more than adequate, more than what we have to share with each other. Namely, the actual incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus. So I just want to put that in perspective for you, that when Jesus came to earth, it was monumental, it was cosmic, it was divine in significance. It was amazing. And words can't really help us grasp how important and how incredible that was. But it was the thing that God did to fix the world. So I'm going to read a Bible passage that tells a Christmas story. But it's not the typical one. It's not the one we normally turn to. John 1. I'm going to turn to John 1. This is a Christmas story. And then we'll share. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Let's skip verse. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or a husband's will, but born of God. The last verse. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. That's what we're celebrating. That's why we do all this for Christmas. You know, it wasn't just a baby. There weren't just 3 wise men with presents. It wasn't just angels and shepherds. It was God fixing creation. It was a myth that's true. The stuff of fantasy and fairy tales and comic books, real. God become man. So, that's why we're here. That's who we are. We have a relationship with this God-man. Emmanuel, Jesus Christ, is here today. He promises he is here today. His Spirit is in our hearts. And he's alive, he is active, and he's powerful. And I want us to spend the rest of our time sharing about that power. What has Jesus done in your life, in your family, in your community this year? How have you seen him act? What has he taught you? How has he challenged you? Are you angry at him? Has he done something that made you angry? Are you happy with him because he's blessed you in a certain way? Let's take some time, church family, to share. And we'll just go with it and see what the Spirit has for us. And then when we're done. Okay? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. Up there in the balcony, Fred has a microphone if you want to share. Up here, I've got a couple microphones. I need a runner. And just raise your hand if you want to share something, a praise, an encouragement, an affirmation. And we'll see what God has for us today.